Kanye West's Oval Office meeting with President Trump, sparking a media firestorm. Here's a quick refresher of what went down yesterday.
You know, they tried to scare me to not wear this hat, my own friends, but this hat, it gives me power in a way. When I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman. If he don't look good, we don't look good. This is our president. He has to be the freshest, the flyest planes. But I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy a hug. I love this guy right here.
The sit-down setting off CNN's Don Lemon.
Don, what did you think?
Wolf, I have no animosity for Kanye West. What I saw was a minstrel show today. Him in front of all of these white people, mostly white people, embarrassing himself and embarrassing Americans, but mostly African Americans. It was so hard to watch. Him sitting there being used by the President of the United States.
Lemon taking his disapproval a step further by invoking the rapper's, his late mother.
This was an embarrassment. Kanye's mother is rolling over in her grave. I spoke to one of her friends today, or texted with one of her friends today from Chicago, Donda's friends. I used to live there. I know him. She said Donda would be embarrassed by this. She would be terribly disturbed by this. And he needs a father figure. He needs someone to help him and to guide him. And he needs a hug more than anything. Kanye, back away from the cameras, go get some help, and then come back and make your case.
Others in the media are also blasting the Kanye-Trump summit. Watch this.
This is such a blitzkrieg of blathering ignorance on one level. And I say this as a man who loves Kanye West, who admires his genius, and who considers him a friend.
This is the kind of conversation that would typically be held between people wearing hospital bracelets.
There is a deep sense of betrayal among people who follow hip-hop and rap.
This was a giant, shiny object in the Oval Office wearing a red hat.
But if you think you're
bonkers.
going to get a thoughtful play-by-play and political analysis, you're not, because that was an assault on our White House.
Then why give it all this hype? Why fan the flames of the foolish? And it's not okay what happened here.
And celebrities are criticizing Kanye. Fellow rapper T.I. posting on Instagram, quote, "This is the most repulsive, disgraceful, embarrassing act of desperation and auctioning off of one's soul to gain power I've ever seen." And other Hollywood stars like Chelsea Handler and Rosie O'Donnell also slamming the visit. We could go on and on, but we want to get to the discussion here. Jesse, let me turn it over to you. The hysteria over this meeting was hot and heavy.
Right. So if Kanye is so marginalized and so insignificant and such a clown, why is the media so angry? Why are they so upset? It's because he's influential. It's because he's making a lot of money. He's very talented. And a lot of people listen to him because he's very popular. And if the black community is open-minded about President Trump, then that poses a real significant threat to Democrats electorally. The Democrats have already written off the white working class. They've written off veterans. They've written off key constituencies traditionally within their party. They have to drive up numbers among minorities in order to stay competitive with Donald Trump in 2020. So when they see this, this isn't good for them. And you remember when Kanye West said George Bush doesn't care about black people. And the same media that's criticizing him now applauded him back then. So when you criticize, as a black man, a Republican, you're sane. And then when you spread love to a Republican president, you're insane. I don't like how that works. And Donald Trump won about 8% of the black vote. Does that mean all those 8% of African-American voters in this country are crazy? They're ignorant? They're all fools? Women who vote for Donald Trump, are they gender traitors? Hispanics who vote for Donald Trump, are they nuts too? It's funny how the media, and they look really small right now, they're trying to dehumanize him. When the media says that voting as a black man for Donald Trump is against your self-interest, who are they to determine who's someone's self-interest? Why can't black Americans determine their own self-interest by themselves? Why do they have to have the liberal media tell them what to do? And if you look at On Balance, Donald Trump's trade agenda, his manufacturing agenda, his immigration agenda is beneficial to black voters, policy-wise, and you can dislike him for other things, and that's fine. But on balance, I think it's fair for black Americans to say, you know what, I could consider the Trump agenda, made in America, make America great again.
Yeah, and in that scenario you talked about back in 2005, at least in the recent past, Kanye West has actually apologized for saying that. The media never would apologize.
And I just want to say, I'm part of the American media, and when he said that about President Bush, I was someone who definitely was highly critical because, again, he didn't know what he was talking about. So here you come and you say, oh, why can't black people be open-minded about President Trump, this and that? Hey, guess what, Jesse? By your own measure, 92% of black people said our self-interest is not being served by the agenda being promoted by this president.
So he can't think for himself?
No, if he was thinking for himself, he would have had some substantive argument to make. Instead, here's what he said, Jesse.
Yeah.
Oh, I put on this hat, and it gives me superpower. I really want a father figure, and then, you know, he's separated by the desk. He has to get up and walk around. Trump doesn't even get up to hug the guy. He's there hugging Trump like he's holding on. He's trying to get something out of this.
So is Jim Brown a fool?
No, let me finish. Jesse, did I interrupt you?
Go ahead.
Come on, man. So what I'm saying to you is you hear this man say stuff like, oh, Trump's on a hero's journey. Maybe he's on a folly. I don't know. But all it looked like was some guy ranting, and I am, you know, personally offended by the kind of profanity he brought there. I don't understand how anybody can tolerate it.
When Joe Biden said it's a big effing
But
deal.
I don't get this. When you had people like Common, Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar doing things with President Obama, the right wing went nuts. They said these guys are rappers. Some of them associate with thugs and gangsters. Hey, what about this guy? All of a sudden, the man who's insulted Republicans, the man who has nothing to say other than his hat gives him superpower, is a Republican hero? This is ridiculous. It's absurd. And Don Lemon, amen. This is someone who is a shameful example of behavior in the presence of a powerful white man.
I thought it was shameful how he went after his mom like that. You never go after someone's mother, Juan.
He didn't go after his mother. He said his mother would be rolling up.
Yeah, that was a cheap shot.
The audience here, by the way,
Admit it was a cheap shot.
It wasn't. You distort this whole conversation. This was not about black people or about his impact on the black vote. This is about how white Americans who say, hey, Trump has problems with race, feel about Trump. Now Trump says, hey, look, America, I got a black friend in a red hat.
Okay, you guys, I'm going to have to interrupt. The reason I was looking like that is because we have tape from President Trump. Watch.
From Turkey. He's, I think, in good shape. He'll be stopping most likely in Germany for a full checkup. And then he's going to be coming to the Oval Office, most likely on Saturday. But we're very honored to have him back with us. He suffered greatly, but we're very appreciative to a lot of people, So Pastor Brunson's in the air, heading to Germany, and then coming to the U.S. He'll be landing on Saturday, most likely Saturday in D.C.
What caused the release, Mr. President?
Well, we spoke to Turkey, and he went through a system, and we got him out. They've been trying to get him out for a long time. Well, this has nothing to do with anything. There was no deal made at all. There was no deal. But we're very happy to have him and have him in good shape. I hear he's in very good shape.
Mr. President, are you reevaluating the relationship with Saudi Arabia?
Well, we're going to find out what happened with respect to the terrible situation in Turkey having to do with Saudi Arabia and the reporter. And nobody knows quite yet. Nobody's been able to put it all together. People are starting to form ideas, and as they're formed, we'll let you know. But it certainly is a terrible thing.
Has their record been overlooked for too long?
Excuse me?
Has their record otherwise been overlooked for too long?
Well, I think a lot of records are overlooked. If you look at Iran, if you look at so many other countries, take a look at Syria. You take a look at a lot of countries' records have been overlooked. But this is a very serious thing, and we're looking at it in a very serious manner. Okay? And we'll see if we have a big crowd.
Have you spoken to the king of Saudi Arabia about this matter?
I have not called him. I will be calling him. I will be calling at some point King Solomon. You know, you're right in the way of the camera behind you. I'm sure they think you're a very good-looking guy, but maybe not that good from the back, right? All right. So go ahead.
So you plan to call him soon? Could you tell us
I'll
what
be speaking to him. Yes, pretty soon.
What should be like?
Well, I can't tell you, but I will say that they are looking very hard and fast. And not only us, a lot of people are looking to find out because it is potentially a really, really terrible situation. So we'll see what happens.
Was it a mistake for Jared to develop such a close relationship with
Yes.
Was it a mistake for Jared to develop such a close relationship with the
No,
Crown
I don't know if it's any closer than other relationships that people have. We have a lot of very close relationships with a lot of countries. But this is a serious problem. Thank you.
For the Treasury Secretary to go to their investment conference?
Well, I guess a lot of people are going over to an investment conference. And he actually called this morning, and he will make that determination. But he was partially over there anyway. A lot of people are going over to the investment conference. We'll see what happens. Maybe some won't be going. We'll make that determination very soon, okay? We'll see you over at the rally.
Have you read the UN climate report yet?
President Trump talking about Pastor Brunson, the American who was released from captivity. He was being held by the Turkish government, and now he is going to be returned to America. The president says he should be back in D.C. by Saturday. He said probably Saturday. He's got to stop in Germany. He's going to get a checkup, and then he will be returning to America. So that is a big win for the Trump administration, and every American should be glad that Pastor Brunson is being returned to America. He never should have been held in the first place. We're going to get back to the story we were talking about. Jesse and Juan had a chance to talk about Kanye West's meeting in the Oval Office and the reaction to it, and then Greg and Jedediah hadn't had a chance. We'll go to Greg first.
Well, first, good news about the pastor. It shows what happens when you have a president who doesn't blink. They knew that he wasn't going to change his mind.
And their economy is in a free fall.
Yeah, so here's I want to address the central argument that Lemon has and others have when you describe somebody as a minstrel or as a prop. I've learned in my life that any criticism that can be applied everywhere is useless. It's pointless. For example, I could just as easily look at Don Lemon and say, wow, CNN pulled out their prop. They needed somebody to talk about Kanye, so they called up the black guy. So you can use this. You can use this here on the 5 with Juan. I can call you a prop, but I would never do that. The fact is, this sort of criticism can be applied anywhere that there are blacks and whites together. That's my point. Wherever you see an olive branch between a black person and a white person, somebody can say, ha! The white's using him as a minstrel, and the black is seeking power. You can say that now for everything, and that's why it's so dangerous. Why not just take it for what it is, which you're seeing people actually having a dialogue? When you reduce somebody to a minstrel, or you have the gall to actually bring up his late mother to make a point, in which you use his late mother as some kind of vessel for your own envy. What I saw there, I saw a person who felt ineffectual, who felt that he's not part of the game. So he sees what's going on in the White House, and Lemon in his brain is saying, why can't that be me? That's not fair. I should be there. And so he went after this guy because this guy has the guts to stand up and take the slings and arrows. If CNN were around 2,000 years ago, the C would stand for crucify him.
Jedediah, what do you think about especially the comments that he is mentally ill? And that to me felt a little over the line.
Over the line. And what bothers me about this is that they've infantilized Kanye. This is a guy who's been very successful. He's a successful businessman. He went in there. He wasn't just talking nonsense, as some have said. He was talking about stop and frisk. He was talking about what he cares about. I mean, what do you think all these celebrities that went into the Obama White House, you think they were all policy experts? They all went in and they sat down and they were a Dana Perino? No, they had an opinion. They cared about issues. They went in. They made their case. The criticism from the right was not personal attacks of those people. It was not saying things which have been said about Kanye, that he's dumb, that he's sick, that he's a madman, that he's a traitor. All of that has been said about Kanye. People were saying, when folks on the left were going in, celebrities on the left were going in to meet with Obama and all that, the commentary was, well, this is typical because, you know, Democrats and Hollywood are hand in hand. No one was going out there and saying personal attacks, oh, George Clooney is mentally unstable. This is over the line. This is because they cannot handle dissent. They cannot handle dissent. And as someone who has lived in New York City her whole life, I went to Columbia University, I taught in liberal academia, I can tell you that when you stand out, there is a pattern on the left of having to marginalize that person, of having to point out that there's something wrong along with them, of having to drive them out. They are now trying to ruin this guy's career and ruin his credibility. And they're going to stop at nothing. And I have a real problem with that. Whether I agree with Kanye or not, that type of behavior should not be accepted.
By the way, Greg, I just don't want it to go without comment that I don't think I'm a token or.
But you see my point about the
argument.
argument.
I don't see your point because I don't think anybody would say that to you, Greg.
No, my point is anytime.
And I don't think that given my record as a journalist, I don't think there's any way that you'd say, oh, but gee, does Juan Williams
I'm talking about the superficial looking at color. People looking at color and going, oh, there's a black person and a white person.
Greg,
I'm saying it could be used anywhere.
As a white person, I would say, listen, what happened? This is what Jedediah is saying. Let's look at the substance. Let's make a judgment.
Exactly.
And when I looked at the substance, I saw nothing but a public relations stunt put on by the president, and maybe Kanye deciding it helped his reputation.
I am the token short person here.
That is true.
What?
Wait a minute.
I'm the token male short person.
Thank you. Let's be specific. All right.